Welcome back to our special mashup edition of Burst, the ASCAP podcast and ASCAP Screen Time. Today we're joined by Dev Hynes and Rebecca Hall to hear about their fantastic Sundance film, Passing. Passing is Rebecca's directorial debut, and it's a wonderfully personal project for her. You may also know Dev as Blood Orange or have heard his score for last year's acclaimed Queen and Slim. Here's Dev and Rebecca.
Hello, Dev. Here we are talking about the film Passing that we both worked on, that I was directing and you were doing music and composition and amending of an existing piece.
Although you're a big part of the score.
Well, there's some editing, but it's kind of But the film is based on a Harlem Renaissance novel from 1929 by an astonishing writer called Nella Larson, and the film is about two light-skinned black women who are capable of white passing in the world, and one has chosen to entirely cross the color line and lives with a racist white man, and the other one has done the opposite of that and lives in Harlem and is very much involved in a different kind of existence. And they were at high school together, and at the beginning of the film, they run into each other. And then the film sort of becomes an exploration of racial passing, but also uses it as a metaphor to explore, I don't know, a ton of things, everything that you could possibly think of. And I suppose I was attracted to it for a lot of reasons, but mostly because I think it's an extraordinary and contemporary and blisteringly modern piece of writing, but also because I have a history of passing in my family, and my grandfather who was white passing, and possibly his parents who were also white passing. My mother's from Detroit, so African-American ancestry, heritage. And, I suppose I was coming to terms with aspects about this when I read the book, and it became very personal for me, and don't know, sort of, it becomes a sort of way of exploring, making something became a way of exploring a feeling for me and putting it into some sort of poem, if you will. I mean, I think of films as being a bit dreamy. Certainly like. And then Dev came along and agreed to help with the ideas that I had for sound, which were quite specific, and he managed to understand that completely. I mean, I'm just so thrilled that I was able to get you to do a little bit of music on this. I wish I hope that there'll be another chance to do more, because I've always been such a huge fan of yours, honestly.
Three of you. I feel like honored I'm even a slight part in this film. I feel lucky to be involved in any way. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. Well, it was kind of, the sound stuff was really, it's very specific, and I think, and I just, even though I was asking you, I mean, for people who have no idea what I'm talking about, the basic gist of it was there was a piece of music that by a woman who recorded it in the 60s, Emma Hoy, I'm concerned, I just call her Emma Hoy because I'm always concerned I'm going to say it wrong. But there's several different names. You either say Emma Hoy, Segway, Webbro, or you say Emma Hoy. What do you?
I know, I'm really bad.
You're the same, you're not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
She's a phenomenal musician, and she recorded an extraordinary album in the 60s of solo piano that she composed it. And it's on the Ethiopic albums, volume 21. And there was a song called Homeless Wanderer, which has been with me for, I want to say I wrote the first draft of this script many years ago, but that song was with me definitely for the last 3 drafts before going into production. So probably the last 3 or 4 years, that song became this sort of centerpiece for not just how I wanted the movie to sound, but also how I wanted it to feel tonally. I remember giving it to Tessa and Ruth, and I remember playing it a lot on set. And I didn't even know whether I'd get the rights to the piece of music to use it, because it struck me as something that I just wanted to recur all the way through the film, like this sort of loop that the characters are stuck in. But there's other elements in the movie that needed supporting and taught to be in dialogue with that piece of music. Like there's this sort of trumpet that's over the road that you hear peripherally. And so I asked you to come and find a way to be in dialogue with that piece of music. And then you already knew it, didn't you? You did already.
Yeah. I knew it very well. I love that piece. And I'd done like that, for Tessa, I'd slowed, before all of this, I'd slowed it down for her to listen to in between takes, so she could get into the, forget her name. Yeah. Yeah. To get into that world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that piece. So I knew it very well, and well, I'd say it's like, actually, in terms of piano playing, it's kind of a like a I guess like a late influence. Like the style is very unique and touches on a lot of different things. Different, you can hear elements of like Nina Simone's playing in it, and Bach even, and odd weird things. But I was always struck by it. So it was so cool to like work with that music, because it's actually something I really, really love and really know quite well.
Yeah, it's remarkably evocative. There was a moment when I was very worried that I wasn't going to be able to get the rights to it and I wouldn't be able to use it. And I remember just thinking, I don't know what to do, because I'm sure that Dev could compose something that was reminiscent of it, but also the recording quality of that recording. It sounds like it always sounds like it's in this sort of, I don't know, this other world. It has this ethereal poetry to it that I don't know how you capture that. I mean, I wouldn't even know how you.
Yeah, it's weird. I actually had to do some really weird shit to.
I was kidding. Yeah, I never really asked you. Yeah.
I had to do some really weird shit. But luckily, I have practice in it, because in my own music, a lot of the time, and people will ask me about it that have tried to play along. But if you try to play along to my music, you may find that you can't, because it lives in between keys. Because I always warp all the sounds so that it's like these weird half tones. And so it was cool, because I have practice in it. And so I basically was doing that the whole time to match that music. And within within a 20-second chunk, would slip the piano and trumpet parts in between weird half tones. But that's fun for me. I love doing that stuff.
I was always trying. I was like asking you to do very sort of like. Sometimes I remember I would call you up during post-production and ask you to do like a tiny, weeny little thing that just didn't really feel that significant. But I was always struck that you emotionally intuited exactly what I was after, and I think that's just so valuable. I'm actually weirdly quite allergic to film scores, and there's very few that I'm comfortable with. And I think your work in this area has been incredible. So I'm like, I'm in my comfort zone when I talk to you about this stuff. It's nice.
Oh, that's well, I think I like you were mentioning like feeling, and that's just what I really respond to. I mean, it's always the feeling with me, like really more than anything else. Even when I sit down and if I write a song or write anything, I tend to have the feeling before there's any instrument or notes or music or anything. So I think that's, and luckily you're very, very good at describing your feelings. So so I think that's why. I think it always made sense. Everything you said made sense.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
I mean, how was it finishing a film this year? It's a big question, but
there are some things that I wouldn't change about it. I mean, I wouldn't change the end result, and I don't know that the end result would have been the same under other circumstances. So it's sort of a bit chicken and egg, really. But I don't know. There was like, I always think like back in the days before digital, filmmakers didn't have any instant gratification in terms of like seeing an idea happen.
right.
Because you'd have to, reel the film backwards, cut it, and whatever, all that stuff. And there's a part of me that's actually weirdly quite grateful for having to do remote editing, because like Sabine, the editor, and we didn't ever decide to do like a sort of shared screen thing. Honestly, neither of our internets were strong enough. and like, it also seemed like it would be frustrating. So we ended up getting into this process of essentially me giving a note, whether it was very, like, it could be something really tiny, like shave 0.2 seconds off that frame and then move to there. But it would take 2 hours for her to do it and then upload to me. So the whole thing took any instantaneous, it just took that out of the equation, and just having that extra time to like just live with a thought and let it penetrate my brain in a different way, I think was really significant. Because you could just sit with something longer. Like there are ideas that I might have thrown out if I'd seen them immediately, and it's kind of living with them in a different way, and I'm seeing how they add up with something else, and it's just slightly different perspective, and I really value that. And musically, it was fun, like just sitting with all that stuff and seeing the stuff come in. And usually there are big rooms with lots of people and their opinions, and they're doing this and that. Like, we need more music here. We need, and I was always like, for me, less is more. Let's just actually make it quite sort of oppressively silent in some places.
Yeah.
And I think possibly being on my own, I got away with some of those choices more than I might have done. Maybe.
I mean, I relate. I like the last 3 albums I've made. I've handed them in absolutely completed.
Right. You considered everything. You're like the kind of master of all. Like, let me do a bit of this, and then I'll pick up the cello and do that. I mean, it's kind of like I get it. I get it. Yeah. That solitary creativity can be quite intense and important.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's like, which I love that you do too. But I think if you trust what it is you're doing, and you trust like your vision, and I think importantly trust the people that you're working with, then I think I don't know, I really believe and value that. I think that's like a very, very, very important. I think it's very important, because to me, one of the worst feelings is finishing something and then there's that thing where you listened to someone and it's just like circling around, and you don't even know, it's not even like there's no positive or negative really even attached to it, but it's just like circling there, and that feeling really destroys me.
I hear that. That's really that's no, and it can work both ways. I mean, people can really
Yeah.
sway you into like, it's incredibly important to listen to other people's opinions at a certain stage, but also there's that thing of just my sense of trusting somebody else over my gut, or is suddenly overriding my gut when it doesn't usually, is very disturbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Fully relate.
yeah. Well, it's going to be exciting. People are going to see the movie, and I hope people, you know, like, I didn't even talk really about the trumpet stuff that you did on it, because that was a weird process. Maybe let's quickly talk about it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was that was a pretty wild process. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so the very, 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 very cool thing in Rebecca's film, I'm talking to the audience, is that there's a trumpet player next door, who you hear throughout the film. How many seasons does the film go through?
It goes through summer, fall, winter, 3.
Cool. Yeah, and you hear him gradually improving, and that music, the improvisations blend in and out with the piano piece. So it's really strange, but it's so cool. I love that. I love that concept. So
Yeah,
much.
yeah. But the music ends up being, you know, it's sort of a combination of like sounding like he's warming up and like he's not really doing anything. So it's very sort of loose.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't COVID and we got to do this from scratch, the one thing that I'm sad about is I would love for you and I and trumpet player to be in a room together and just watch the movie and in real time just improvise over the whole thing. I mean, that's my one, like, if only we could have done that.
I know, that would have been
good. But where we got to was, you know, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool for me too, because there was so many it was done in such pretty wild ways. I mean, there's like, I think in the end, it's a combination of 3 different players.
Yeah.
Which is so crazy to think about.
I mean, this is terrible, and I probably shouldn't say this because, you know, you know, I ended up cutting little bits of this and that according to, because there was sometimes that, you know, underneath a certain word, I wanted it to have a different feeling than where because so I just take a bit and put it. It was very sort of crazy process.
I love that.
Like, you gave me all the raw material, and some of it's not like that. Some of it's very much exactly precisely in just the score. It's not so much underneath dialogue, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's really fun. I love that.
But yeah, 3 trumpet players.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird. And it's like a weird mixture of like written things and me just writing directions. It was cool. I mean, it's kind of a perfect mix of how I make music, really. It's like a combo of written things and improvisations.
Now, if I do it again next time, let's you know, bring in the orchestra.
That, yes.
We'll go for maximalist next time. All right, the time's up.